When was the last time that you watched Ultraman? If you're not a fan of it, chances are many years ago, or maybe you've never watched it but have heard it because Ultraman is definitely one of the classic iconic superheroes. You know, I remember that time back when I was still a kid. In my country, TV networks usually broadcasted them very early in the morning along with Power Rangers, and I swear to God, those shows were one of the main reasons I woke up really early. You just see me posting the Ultraman post and resting the hell out of her pillow, cheating as a kaiju, or maybe finding any cool stick I found in the wild and pretending to be a Power Ranger swordsman. Specifically, the Red Ranger, because I like red. I like being the main character and narcissistic tendencies, but that's not the point here. That's not the point here. Those were really good times. Although I've mostly forgotten stuff about Ultraman now. The most recent work that I've come into contact was probably the Ultraman manga that was published back in 2020. That is, until now. Recently, they released a new animated Ultraman movie called Ultraman Rising, and I thought it looked cool, so I watched it, and the summary of my whole review is basically, oh, that's so good! The writing, the characters, the visuals, everything. I mean, everything. Yeah, that's basically my review. No, I'm kidding. Please stick around. I need to yap about this movie because it's so good and you're now forced to listen to my yapping. Hi, I'm Naxos, and today I'll be talking about Ultraman Rising. Ultraman Rising is a 2024 animated superhero film which is a Japanese-American co-production between Netflix Animation and Chubaraya Productions, the studio that holds the copyright over the Ultraman franchise. This movie was released worldwide on Netflix on June 14, 2024, and since then it has really taken off and received widespread attention from casual watchers, Ultraman fans, and even critics who have actually endlessly praised the film's animation, writing, and voice performances. The story revolves around Ken Sato, a world-renowned American baseball player who at the peak of his career suddenly goes back to his home country, Japan, and plays in the Japanese league instead, fully leaving behind a championship match. This is literally like if Prime LeBron suddenly quits NBA for some reason and then chooses to play in a random country's basketball association. Like, it's a decision that's just plainly weird. However, unbeknownst to all, his real reason for returning is to actually take on the mantle of Ultraman, the giant hero that battles giant monsters for the safety of people. This was a request from his father, who was the Ultraman before him, now currently old and unable to fully exert his Ultraman powers. The thing is, he hates being Ultraman. He thinks it's a nuisance to his baseball career, and he hates his father even more, who chose to live the life of Ultraman staying in Japan while him and his mother migrated to America many years ago. But his world soon turns upside down as he witnesses a giant monster being killed while holding a mysterious round-shaped package or item. However, as it turns out, this round-shaped package is actually an egg as it hatches while he's holding it, and with it inside is a baby monster, a very adorable little monster that now recognizes him as her mama. Utterly confused, he goes back to his secret base with the baby monster where he's about to learn what it truly means to be Ultraman. So, right off the bat, we're introduced with his childhood origin. From the beginning, we already see Ken Sato, his family, and his ties to the inner workings of Ultraman. We see him with a very loving family, with her mom being a baseball fan, while his father is Ultraman himself. I really like the fact that he is a baseball fan because baseball is big in Japan. If you didn't know, baseball is so big in Japan that players from high school baseball has badass nicknames. There's this one guy who's called the Monster from the North, also nicknames like Enemy of the People, the King's Fated Rival, or even simply the Emperor. Like, you cannot tell me that's not a cold nickname because that's literally a cold ass nickname. But I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. Anyways, it creates a sense of immersion for the viewers because you know it holds a bit of semblance or relatability in real world. I love the visuals the moment I first saw it. It's following the current trend of stylized visuals with its specifically curated frame rate and art style. One of the best things about this movie is that you don't need to have watched any type of Ultraman before watching this, and it manages to explain the concept of Ultraman to you even if you're not entirely familiar with the franchise. He's a giant guy who fights giant monsters. A very simple narrative structure but provides a good amount of depth for you to get hooked within the first few minutes. I mean, it's like liking King Kong and Godzilla. Who doesn't want to see cool giant monsters and heroes fighting? The plot of Ultraman Rising is simple and linear, but where it excels the most is its execution. The main themes of the show are family and balance. Throughout the show, it repeatedly emphasizes the importance of family in gaining that inner balance within you, and it's always been beautifully done. We repeatedly see this not only on Ken Sato's personal struggles towards juggling and reconnecting everything in his life, but also on other characters' struggles, and even monsters. While the film might be a bit predictable at times, what makes the writing truly great are the compelling fleshed out characters and attention to detail that really amplifies the immersion. For example, when I was younger, one of the things I often ask about myself while watching Ultraman is, with all the fights that Ultraman has been doing in the city while battling monsters, how much damage is he actually causing? And are there people who accidentally gets stumped out while he's doing his thing? The movie actually answers that question, and it became one of my favorite details in the movie. I'm talking about the reality of damage control on this film. In the beginning, Ken Sato is a very inexperienced Ultraman, and so he causes a lot of damage, well, actually shit tons of damage to both public and private property from battling the kaiju. Hell, he even endangers a lot of civilians on the way. The worst thing here is that he's a jackass. He's vain and he's excessively arrogant to the point that he doesn't seem to listen to anyone. There was this one scene where he was literally called out by a grandma in the middle of fighting kaiju to stop showboating and actually do his job, which made me chuckle a bit.
Showboating and do your job!
I think I just did.
And then a scene proceeds where he got thoroughly beaten up by the said monster and was actually saved by the Kaiju Defense Force, which is kind of like the military but for monsters, where he was then forced to run away because of his failure. The world feels alive because the film shows that Ken Sato's irresponsibility actually causes a lot of repercussions and consequences due to his poor decisions and refusal to acknowledge his own shortcomings. We see it later from the TV report and how people being interviewed reacted to his screw-ups. Another detail that I also really loved in this movie is that Ultraman does not actually kill the giant monsters. He merely incapacitates them. Kaiju or monsters in this world are not mere beasts to be killed, but rather recognized by his father, the previous Ultraman, as more of a species that needs to be preserved and protected. The rampaging monsters are often actually just confused creatures who rampage because they feel threatened. Sure, it might sound dangerous and makes things unnecessarily harder in terms of protecting the people, or even downright hypocritical, but that is a creed that Ultramen like Ken Sato and his father are willing to protect. And I really love that because it spins a very refreshing take on the pre-existing cliche for kaijus. As a matter of fact, one of the main plots of Ultraman is Ken Sato literally raising a baby kaiju because its mother died. This event is one of the major catalysts for his growth, not only as Ultraman but as a person. The characters in the show are nothing short of phenomenal. What I really love about the characters is that they feel alive because of the struggles and problems that they face, specifically their problems regarding adulthood or parenthood. Aside from the main character, we have Hayao Sato or Professor Sato, the father of Ken Sato and former Ultraman. Fearing for the life of his family, he and his wife decided for Ken and her wife to migrate to America while he stays in Japan. Honestly, it was an understandable decision. However, it also comes to mind that this was a very hard one for him because his father had to sacrifice his presence in his son's life, which led to Ken hating him. In a way, the movie shows you two sides of a story. Sato's father was a great man, but it also does not immediately equate to him being a good father. It was a sacrifice he had to make. I truly understand the choices that he had to make for the greater good, and yet at the same time, I recognize his faults, his mistakes as a person who struggles and tries to do right, even with all the imperfections, and even if it means alienating his own son, which probably hurt him like 1,000 needles pricked in the heart. We also have Wakita, the interviewer lady. I like the lady reporter because first, she's hot and that's it. No, I'm kidding. What I like about her is her curiosity towards Ken Sato and his reasons for his sudden leaving in America and everything. Honestly, I also like her patience because there was a scene there where she was waiting for an interview with Sato and he was actually an hour late, but she was still accommodating bro like she's basically a saintess. It's also heavily implied that she's a single mother, and throughout the show, we see her struggles in her life, raising a child while balancing it with her work. In fact, she's one of the people that Ken talked to, asking for advice because he was so lost in taking care of the baby kaiju. Finally, I want to talk about Ken Sato, specifically Ken Sato's character development. At the beginning, Ken Sato was nothing but a massive jerk full of hot air on his head. As I've said before, he was vain and excessively arrogant. This was especially emphasized the first time a press conference was held for him, and all of his answers were nothing short of pure narcissism. However, behind all that facade is a hidden depth inside him. The truth is, while Ken Sato may appear as nothing but a self-absorbed prick, it was a personality he developed to protect himself from appearing vulnerable and weak. In one of his interviews, there was one specific scene where he explained a brief overview of his stay in America, and him revealing with how a lot of kids treated him differently because he was Japanese. He was bullied. He then concluded that if people are gonna talk, he'll give them something to talk about, which is baseball. Another thing is he's not a bad person at heart. A proof of this is his attempt to shield Gigantron, one of the kaiju, to protect it from the possibly lethal missiles of KDF. Even though it was a spur of the moment thing, it was still a proof of a valiant soul hiding in his psyche. And another proof of this is him taking in the baby kaiju that hatched to his secret base. He could have just abandoned it or let it be because of his confusion, but he did not. In fact, he even cared and fed it, even with all of his grumbling and frustrations. Like I said, this baby kaiju, which he will later name as Baby Emmy, is gonna be the catalyst for his change. Although unwillingly, he was forced to take care of Baby Emmy for a time. We see him as he attempts to balance out parenthood and his career. Spoilers, he sucks so bad at balancing it to the point that he also ended up sucking at baseball, the one thing that he truly loved. Sleepless nights, tireless days, in a way that made me realize how much my parents have sacrificed for me. I was born into a loving family, fortunately, and as I was watching the movie, I couldn't help but wonder how much dreams, goals, or things that they wanted to do was put to a halt the moment I was born, because they cared for me and wanted only the best for me. Honestly, I was crying when I was writing this part, so give your parents a hug and make sure they know that you love them. I think a lot of our parents' sacrifices and frustration often goes unnoticed, never being seen to us because they don't want us to suffer or think that there's something wrong. Anyways, Ken will then contact Wakita, the interviewer lady, to ask for advice. We see him reach out to her as a sign of humility, finally sparking in him now that he is at his lowest. What I really like here is the parallel between him raising the baby monster with Wakita raising her own monster. Well, her child, I mean. Her child is not like a literal monster, but let's be honest here, all children are monsters. Wakita literally says this right here.
Honestly, it's not easy, Ken. They're like little monsters sometimes.
We see him crave that human interaction, to have a friend to talk to. He asks Wakita how she does it. And I think this is another time that I cried because, again, parents thing. She explains it beautifully how parents are imperfect, messy people that just does their absolute best in raising a child, and that they're learning as much from their children as much as children are learning from their parents. And this is finally the moment Sato sees and tries to understand Baby Emmy, the kaiju. His inhibitions from his past trauma is slowly cascading and being unraveled as he starts to reach out and understand the creature that is in front of him. He sees the baby attempt to imitate his baseball, and for the first time, he genuinely rejoices and plays with the baby. We then see the parallels between his upbringing and the current situation. He was introduced to baseball, and that became his anchor, his rock, and facing the multitudes of life, even though, his personality did end up getting twisted a bit. In that same regard, Baby Emmy sees the joy in baseball from watching Ken Sato's videos of when he was playing. In those two situations, he plays a different role, and it was now his turn to teach. Later on, he then reconciles with his father as he begins to finally understand the things that led to his father's decision of staying in Japan as Ultraman. After that, we see him once again try to balance out his life, career, and taking care of the baby, except now he has his dad by his side. We see as the budding seed of communication that was implanted the moment he understood Baby Emmy is now fully blossoming and translating into other aspects of his life. He became more outgoing and actually cooperating with his team, teaching them things about baseball. In turn, he even learns more from his father about the secrets of Ultraman. In a way, Ultraman is a story of a delayed coming-of-age story, I suppose, where Ken Sato is finally facing the music and so is able to express himself towards the world in a more open manner. He not only reconciles with his father, but also with all the aspects of himself that he has buried or tried to shy away from. One thing I noticed is that this scene also parallels most families in real life. Most of the times, estranged sons and daughters' relationship with their parents turn better once they have grandchildren, which is, I guess it's a parent thing that I cannot understand yet. I'm not a parent yet, but apparently that's how it works. At its core, Ultraman Rising is a children's film, and a lot of the little things or details might easily go over a child's head. Well, they might have a semblance of understanding of it, however, for the parents or the adults that accompany them, these little details definitely serves as nuggets of relatability. As for the visuals, it has heavily reminded me of the movement that the Spider-Verse started when it comes to animated films. I am talking about stylized animations. More and more films nowadays don't really lean much into making things as quote-unquote 3D as possible, and instead plays around the idea of making wonderful shots and scenes through the masterful mix of 3D and 2D, giving us an enchanting storytelling through unique visuals that results in an unforgettable experience. In conclusion, I really recommend everyone to watch Ultraman Rising, whether you're old, young, single, married, lonely, anything really. I believe that people from different walks of life will be able to enjoy this movie and pick up valuable nuggets of wisdom that we can surely use in our everyday relationships. It's a fun movie that involves giant monsters and giant superheroes but beyond from that, it is also a movie that teaches us a lot of things when it comes to the concept and essence of what it means to be a family. Honestly, I even recommend watching it again just because of how fun of an experience it was to watch it. Anyways, I guess that's really all I wanted to talk about. I guess that's it for my Yap session. This is Laxus and guess I'll see ya.